He's conservative, but not too conservative. He's the governor of the 34th largest state by area, and 7th by population. His favorite day of the week is Tuesday. He is the least interesting man in the world. I don't always need to fall asleep, but when I do, I prefer to watch one of John Kasich's speeches. Stay irrelevant, my friends. This is why John Kasich will never be president. Howdy gang, John Kasich has the curious honor of being the most sane Republican candidate. Of course, that's a lot like saying you're the most talented Kardashian or being the valedictorian of a performing arts high school. It doesn't say much about your actual abilities. John Kasich is only reasonable by comparison. For example, he's opposed to same-sex marriage. That's a pretty outdated position. But look at how he articulates it.
The court has ruled, and I said we'll accept it. And guess what? I just went to a wedding of a friend of mine who happens to be gay. Because somebody doesn't think the way I do, doesn't mean that I can't care about them or I can't love them. So if one of my daughters happened to be that, of course I would love them and I would accept them.
And by comparison...
And I know the whole gay community is trying to make this the new Civil Rights Act. It's not.
Governor Kasich doesn't seem so bad. He's the kind of guy that your dad who supports President Obama but doesn't trust Hillary Clinton would vote for if he got the nomination. Of course, he's not actually going to get the nomination, but it's the thought that counts, right? Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, it's actually winning that counts, as always. John Kasich was the last of the 22 presidential candidates to get into the race just a couple of weeks before the first debate. So he must have known that he needed to have a fiery, exciting announcement speech to capture the attention of the electorate. Let's see how he did.
I just love my wife so much. Such a great partner. And such a great lady.
Aw, look, he's got a beautiful, supportive family that'll stand by him no matter what. Wait a minute, where are you guys going? The speech just started. Looks like John Kasich's speeches can't even hold the attention of the people that are required to love him. You can't see it from this camera angle, but I'm guessing Kasich's family went on to leave the auditorium, hit up the local Panda Express, and wait for Daddy to finish his little speech. Panda Bowl 2016.
I want to tell you about a few of the ones that inspire me. I'd like to start with my Uncle Steve.
Starting with Uncle Steve? How high up the totem pole of inspiration could Uncle Steve possibly be? Because if you're also going to talk about Aunt Linda, Cousin Jeffrey, Grandpa Bob, and uterine brother Miguel, then I'm going to change the channel to something more interesting, like the emergency broadcast signal. Attention, this is a beige alert. A wooden puppet demonstrating human-like qualities calling himself John Kasich has been located at Ohio State University, Columbus. Ohio residents are advised to immediately tune to literally any other channel for the foreseeable future, as it is unknown if John Kasich will ever stop talking. Personally, we suggest watching the Shark Tank Marathon. Can't beat that interstitial music. Bum bum, bum 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 bum.
When I was a kid, you went out and you got a job and you worked at that job your entire lifetime. You got your health care, you got your retirement, and everything was good. Today, you could be a 51-year-old man, and one day after serving and doing everything the right way, somebody walks into your office and says, "I'm sorry, but we don't need you anymore."
Governor Kasich is right. The American worker just isn't being protected the way they used to be. What kind of monster would take away the workers' right to benefits and unionization? Must have been Obama.
Now, the union members we talked to in Wisconsin and also in Ohio, Governor, they say they've given concessions and made changes in health care that have helped save the state millions and millions of dollars. In fact, they say we've been giving and giving, but at what point do you want to stop?
Now look, this is about ending the, sort of the promises that get made that can't be fulfilled.
Oh, turns out he was complaining about his own bad decisions. You know, Governor Kasich, when they say you should be your own biggest critic, I don't think this is what they mean.
We've had a lot worse. The Civil War, you remember reading about it? How about the racial violence that we experienced in this country, the early days of television, or the World Wars, or the Depression?
I don't really know what John Kasich is getting at here. We should support him because things used to be crappier? John Kasich 2016. Remember Hitler? That was crazy. Good thing we don't have to deal with that anymore. Having very clearly established his political philosophy, John Kasich's numbers soared to 2%, and that was enough to get him into the main debate. Now, there are two takeaways from John Kasich's debate performances. One, he's constantly interrupting people, because who's going to bother to ask him any questions in the first place? And two, he uses hand gestures for every single word that he says. The combined result sends the message, "Hey, I'm John Kasich. Remember me? I exist." Ultimately, there isn't a whole lot to say about John Kasich. In fact, if you search John Kasich ad on YouTube, the first result is an ad about Donald Trump. The ad is effective, but John Kasich's name is never actually mentioned in it, which says a lot to me about his campaign strategy. Basically, it seems like he's hoping that Donald Trump will implode and then voters will move on to Ted Cruz. And then he'll implode and then they'll move on to Marco Rubio. And then to Ben Carson, and then to Chris Christie, and then finally to Jeb Bush, and then maybe to Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson, and then John Kasich. But don't worry, Governor Kasich, sometimes people do go with their 8th choice. Just ask the students of Fordham University. Ultimately, voters like flailing inflatable tube men, but they don't want them running the country. And that is why John Kasich will never be president. Who's going to sit down and read Ayn Rand when you can just turn on the TV and watch Donald Duck? It's an impossible battle.